Hey Terraria fans, welcome back to another World Tour video. Guys, in this one, we have a Wild West sort of saloon that is inspired slightly by Red Dead Redemption, which, in fairness, I haven't played, but I have seen a lot of people playing on Twitch and also been recommended to try out, which I may one day. The second build is a Greco-roman inspired bathhouse. Now, this again was actually inspired by someone in my Twitch chat who was looking for a way to build this, and I said, you know what, I'll take a crack at it. And I think it actually turned out pretty good. Speaking of Twitch, as you guys probably know by now, you can find me live every day except for Wednesday and Sunday, and specifically on Tuesdays where we do building with viewers such as yourself. So if you can't make it to Twitch, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button so you know when our next videos go up, and you can check out all of my latest builds. And speaking of builds, let's get to them, shall we? Alright folks, so here we are at our first build. This is our Wild West saloon that is sort of inspired by Red Dead Redemption. Now again, I haven't played it, but you know, I figured it probably looked like a sort of normal saloon in Western movies, so this is what we went with. Now, as always, we're going to highlight all of the materials that I use. So for this build, you're going to need a variety of different blocks, including some amber gemspark and some amethyst gemspark. Now, I think you could switch these out should you want to, but this is what I used, and that's a rather unique one. And we also went with some gray stucco wall, some cog wall, and of course some waterfall wall as well. You will also see that I use some illuminant paint, which you'll see, it's hard to see, but it basically just brightens up a bunch of the stuff. We also use some deep red paint, as well as some palladium column and some wooden beams, which I don't use very often. Finally, we also used a bit of copper plating. Guys, if you have any concerns about any of the materials, I do encourage you to pause the video here so you can actually see them. And if you don't know what any of the blocks are, feel free to leave a comment down below and I will respond with what they are. So with the materials out of the way, guys, let's go check out our Western Saloon. All right, folks, so here we are at the Loon. It is our Western Saloon with a bit of a different look to it. So here we decided to make sort of a water trough where I guess the animals would come in. Obviously, I can't hitch an animal to this, but I thought this was appropriate. We then made a small little banister that you would kind of hang off of, a little balcony, and some of those traditional sort of swinging doors. Now, obviously, I can't connect them close enough, but this was about as close an approximation to the doors that I could make. We also then went with sort of a 3D look down the side. Again, guys, 3D is not my strong suit, but I think this actually turned out fairly well. But for the front, we wanted to make it nice and bright, so we went with some palm wood wall painted brown, some ebon wood wall for a vertical sort of support structure, and then some normal wood wall going across. Underneath our little balcony with these sort of closed back windows here, we actually went with some spooky wood wall, did some fences for the vertical, and then just simply put some platforms that connect in for the sort of triangular aspect. Now, this is where the interesting part comes in. I've never made this technique, but someone in my chat helped me figure this out, which is to do some offline gemspark blocks sort of alternating, and you'll end up with this really nice sort of faded window pane, and I actually really like the way it looks. We actually put this down over here as well. So it's a very cool sort of design if you want a window that you can't really see through. I then went with the more traditional window down here, which is going to be your glass wall with some glass block in front of it, which you then shape into these triangles or diamond shapes, and then of course actuate them so you get this nice dark black line. And it looks fairly good. I think perhaps if we had gone with a normal glass block window instead of the gemspark in the background, that might have looked a little bit better, but I like how it's not super faded, and yeah, it's just a nice look. So beyond that, this little sort of awning or roof is actually just going to be your simple spooky wood wall painted red or deep red, and then we put some platforms to make it look like it's holding, and because we angled it out, it has a bit of a 3D effect. Up here we actually have, this is just some, I believe, dungeon shelf, along with a single piece of a brown painted palladium column, and then we hammered into the bottom position another piece of platform. It kind of gives it a very like balcony-esque look. I'm actually really happy with the way it turned out. For the 3D element on the roof, what we did is we actually angled off some normal wood here and kind of make our shape, and then we inserted into the background our wood wall painted deep red, and it kind of gives you that angled look. I think we maybe could have used a different material or darken this up because this is actuated, but I think overall it actually looks fairly solid. We then put some mahogany wall in the background here across to give it a little bit more separation, and then made some posts that are also actuated. As you can see, we can kind of walk through them. Again, guys, nothing special here. This is just a lot of wood. We have some boreal down here, some ebon wood for the vertical, and then for the actual wall in the back, we did some spooky wood wall just to kind of make it look all beat up and run down. And I just really like the way this turned out. Finally, to the right of the build, I actually went with this water tower that looks pretty good. I think we maybe could have made a little keg here and a little bit of water pouring down or something like that, a little bit more interesting. But I like the way this looks. It's very simple, very clean. And of course we have this sort of same post trick that I usually do, which is a mahogany fence into a boreal fence and back into it. And then that inserts into a piece of copper plating, I believe. And for the top of the sort of barrel, we try to make the shape that I think looks okay. I think it looks barrel-like. I think we could actually add another strip of metal here, but I think I instead went with a wood wall instead. And yeah, the spooky wood wall actually looks pretty good overall. But a lot of sort of little bits and pieces went into this. Put some copper plating down here and some framing, and it actually looks fairly good. And again, no complaints on this. Some cog wall as well in the background behind some of this stuff. It's a little hard to see because it's all kind of vibrating in the background because of the heat. But again, guys, this was really simple to put together. It looks really good and adds a bit of detail to this build. If you have any questions about any of the materials or techniques, please feel free to leave a comment down below. So with that said, let's move to our second build. So for our Greco-roman bathhouse, we have a host of different materials. Nothing too crazy, but certainly some cobalt brick wall and some pearlstone brick wall are worth mentioning because I don't typically use these. And of course, some smooth marble wall, which again, I almost never use. I actually didn't use as much of this as I thought I was going to in the build, but it does look good when you see it. I also use some marble columns and I use some pearlstone brick in the build, which are uncommon. Some smooth marble blocks and some anti-portal blocks, which are just for the emblem or logo at the front of the bathhouse. Everything else, guys, is very straightforward. I do encourage you to pause the video here if you have any concerns about any of the materials, or if you're not sure, feel free to leave a comment down below. Otherwise, pause the video, take a close look, and you can pick out these materials for yourself. So with the materials covered, let us get to our bathhouse. So folks, here we are at our Greco-roman bathhouse. I really like the way this turned out. Now, we made these steps out of pearlstone and kind of just, you know, let them be their own thing. We then hammered the blocks once so that we could have this kind of nice effect and make it look like some very narrow steps, which I do think looks really good. For the columns, we did some palladium column painted white and then put an insert of living mahogany wood with the wand right in the middle. I just really like the way that looks. It kind of has a bit more interesting of a design. We then put this on a platform that's connected into the ground with some, the background here is actually, this is a fence in the middle. The two blocks on the outside, or the two walls that look like blocks on the outside, are actually our Evanstone brick wall. For the roof, we went with a 3D design. As you can tell, we kind of just pulled this from our Western build a little bit. So we went with this sort of flat top across, and we actually just angled down all of our brick and then actuated it. This is all painted gray, so it's a little bit darker. We then used some pearlwood wall in the background as well as the insert, and then put some platforms across, which I don't think were necessarily something that needed to be added, but I think they actually look pretty good. We also added 2 layers of mahogany fence here in white and then in gray, just to kind of give it a little bit more, I guess, more design and structure to it, because without them, they actually looks kind of too flat and too boring. So I actually do like the way that this adds a little bit of detail. So for our bathhouse component itself, because this is the front and this is supposed to be a 3D element, the idea here was that you could actually see through this wall and kind of come in. So it's a little bit odd to kind of get your head around. I can understand that, but generally speaking, the idea is that this was sort of the side wall that you would see from the external side, and then there would be some windows looking into the bathhouse. Now here for the columns, there's nothing really that special. We just went with a really simple design. The columns are quite straightforward. And of course we have some more of our smooth marble that's white and then painted gray in the middle, just to sort of add a little bit more design. For the windows, we actually went with a bit more of a 3D look by doing some slab wall around the outsides, having the wall creep through, and then actually painting this a shadow paint so it's black and looks like it's a window that you're looking into. Now, the one downside to this was because of the way the walls are, you can see that there's little corners on each one, that there's some shadow wall. I can see it and notice, and it bothers me, but there's not a whole lot that I can actually do. Now for the bath itself, guys, obviously we just put some water down and some smooth marble at the base. Then we had some smooth marble wall that alternates with our brick wall, and it just kind of gives it a very interesting feel. I didn't want to go too crazy. I wanted to keep it very simple. We added some benches, and then we actually added some of our torches here that are actually offline. I believe these are the boreal torches that are offline to look like sort of background moldings or statues that are kind of interesting, and just add a little bit more texture and detail to the build. For the base of the pillars, guys, we just have some fences and some fences at the top, and then the wall that is the Evanstone wall in the middle. So we basically took this and reversed it. Now finally over here, guys, I thought it would be kind of nice to have a bit of a vineyard. So I made a tree and a bit of a wine vineyard, as you can see, that is kind of connected to this. Now all of this basically was just meant to be some overgrowth. We have some berries, we have some strange plants, all painted green. We also use some hallowed shard wall for the bright parts of these leaves. We then use a living leaf wand and also some of our normal living leaf wall in the background for some of that sort of depth of color. And of course, then we use some of our crimson scab wall painted green as well. So the idea here was to have some overgrowth, some vines, make it look like there was a vineyard that was growing. I would have added some barrels initially, but I didn't really think they fit in. Maybe in hindsight, it would have been a good idea to leave them. But for now, pretty happy with this little vineyard. I think this is something I may use in the future, some sort of design similar to this to make, I don't know, to attach to homes or houses, maybe make like a winery. That could be an idea. So a couple ideas coming off of this. So there is our Greco-roman bathhouse done. If you have any questions about the techniques or comments, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Right, folks, so there you go. Our Wild West saloon and our Greco-roman bathhouse are both done. They both have 3D elements. I do realize that. So if you're not comfortable with 3D, you don't really need to worry about it. Just take sort of some of the ideas from it and feel free to get inspired to build your own version. So I hope you guys enjoyed the builds as much as I did. Of course, if you're enjoying any of these builds, guys, feel free to check out some of the other videos on our channel. We have a ton of world tours and a ton of speed builds, and I do highly recommend you check them out if you're looking to get some inspiration for your next build. So with all that being said, thank you so much for tuning into the video. Thank you for watching up until this point. And as always, thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. We will see you in the next one.